You're listening to the WB Download, coming to you from Wheel & Builder's showroom in Studio 1C. We are a podcast centered around building custom homes, the customer experience of building a custom home, and a really entertaining listen from many great guests and interviews that may or may not have anything to do with building. I'm excited to share with you their voice and their stories that will enhance your idea of the custom builder world. Hey, hello again, everybody. This is Jeff Whelan with Wheel & Builders coming to you at the WB Download here from Wheel & Builders headquarters in Westchester, Ohio. Today is Tuesday, November the 14th, 2023. Welcome again, everybody. We were talking the other day about how the show, this is our first year doing the podcast. We're wrapping it up, coming down to the end of the year. And I just can't thank everybody enough for listening. We've got almost 1,600 followers now, and it's just been great. We've had some awesome guests. I've learned so much about these people that have come on here that just warmed my heart and got to know them better. And it's been a lot of fun. So I hope you all have enjoyed it. And I really hope that everybody's getting a kick and getting some information out of this deal. Hey, what's happening right now in the world of Wheel & Builders and me? A couple weeks ago, my wife and I went to the Spirit of Construction Gala downtown at the convention center. And this is a big deal for the construction industry. It's put on by a lot of commercial people, but the Spirit of Construction has a board. I served on it for many years, and now it's just gotten so much bigger than what it was when I was there. But group of commercial guys, some residential guys, all sorts of different trades, and everybody comes together, raises a lot of money for scholarships to get these kids to go to school to learn more about construction, hopefully, and enter the construction world. So it's a black tie affair. It gives us a night out and to enjoy it. And man, the older I get, I guess, the more people I see there that are my age that I know, and we can really enjoy it. So, like anything, when I was younger, when I first got on that board, it was a lot of people who were significantly older than I am. And it just, not that I had a problem with it. It just, when we go to the gala, it was business, and then get to see people when we leave. And now it seems like it's a lot more fun because there's a lot more people that I know. The other thing I wanted to tell you was, I told you in the past that I was planning my 30th class reunion from Ross High School, and that went off. So we had that just about a week and a half ago. And we held it at Spooky Nook Sports Complex in the Champion Mill Hotel in Hamilton there. That's a new deal. That's a really big deal. It's part of the revitalization of Hamilton. And of course, Ross is close to Hamilton, which is why we wanted to have it over there. And it was a hit. Everybody loved it. They had a great time. We ended up with about 61 people coming to it. My goal was 100, but we ended up with 61, which was really good. Food was great. And the people who helped us over there at Champion Mill were excellent. If you get an opportunity, I think that you should swing up there and check that place out. But I just had a blast planning it. I had a blast that night, of course. But when I got together a group of people that were kind of in our group, when we were in high school, we were all really good friends. We don't get to see each other hardly at all anymore through the years. And it was funny because I put this group together. We get on a joint text message. We get on a joint email. We get our group. I said not joint group, email group text messages, and we get on phone calls. And one of the girls said, we're all like brothers and sisters. As soon as we get into this deal, we all fall into place and we all know what we need to do. And everybody just starts going to work. And it's like we didn't miss a beat for the last 30 years. So that was really heartwarming. And just seeing everybody and catching up and talking to people, talking about old times, man, it was nostalgic. So it was pretty neat. So that was my 30th class reunion. And up on the farm, we just got done building what we call a hoop barn. And this is a glorified tent. And this is a very inexpensive way to keep things out of the weather. And we have a bunch of hay that we need to put in there. And we have some other implements and some trailers that we want to put in there, get out of the cattle barn so we have more room in the barn for cows. So we just got done with that. And what's happening in the construction world is, I told you I'd give you an update every time we're on here about Homerama. And today we are setting the steel, which means that we poured our footers, we poured our foundation, and we're setting the steel today. We're pouring the basement floor tomorrow, and we're going to pour the garage floor on Thursday, and we're going to start framing on Friday morning, which is pretty exciting, man. I mean, I'm fired up about it because it's looking good, it's moving along good, And I'll keep reminding you guys of this, that we are building for people who we built for before, and they're kind of become friends of ours. And so that makes it all the better for the project. One other important announcement that I wanted to make sure everybody understands this, is that Christmas music has begun on Sirius XM radio. And you can go to the Country Christmas channel, you can go to Hallmark channel, the Holiday channel, every channel that you could possibly think of. Christmas music's out there, man. And I am one of them nerds that's going to just eat up Christmas music as soon as I possibly can, because Christmas comes and goes so quickly that if I can make it last a little bit longer by listening to Christmas music early November, that's what I'm going to do. I got big shoulders. You want to make fun of me? That's fine. I'll take it. Anyway, some other things that are they're going on. We got some really good prospects that we're in architecture for. We just did our plan reveal, our first draft with some customers the other day. And this is one of our milestones that we talk about here at Wheeling Builders. And it's just, it's a really good one, because this is the first time that everything's really kind of come to fruition for people and for me. And you get to see it, and it's just, man, it's fun. It's really fun. And that's why we made it one of our milestones. So let's talk about today's guest as we roll right into it. Today is a guy who I've known for a minute, and his name is Gary Sullivan. He's a radio personality. He's a TV personality. He's based out of Southwest Ohio here, but his show on 1500 KRC, WKRC, is called Homeworks, or At Home with Gary Sullivan. Sorry, it's At Home with Gary Sullivan. And it's nationally recognized across the United States, syndicated across the United States. He's in, I think he's going to tell us today how many different markets he's in on this show and how long he's been doing it. Homeworks is also a TV show that he had done. And I don't think he does it anymore, but he used to, or maybe he still does. And it's on the Sundays, and it's just this guy, and I tell him this, he is the guy who kind of broke through on the DIY. It was before the internet. It was before Instagram. It was before Pinterest. It was before House. And he's on the radio. He's on TV talking about how to do things and talking about how to do things right. He's focused on remodel contractors. He's focused on new building. He's always been a cheerleader for the building industry. So it's exciting for me to have him on here, because I consider him a friend, and he's got a really, really good story. So let's bring the old boy in here, and I hope you guys enjoy this interview. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today we have our special guest, very special to me, a friend of mine from a long time ago. This is Gary Sullivan. Gary, welcome to the show.
How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
What are you doing this morning? You get up early? Do you rise up early?
I am an early bird, and I bet you are the same.
I am. I haven't always been. I always wanted to be, but when I was younger, I think I was hanging out too late, and I couldn't get up too early. That happens.
5:30 in the morning, it's like, man, I gotta get rolling. I got things to do.
So I always I think about this, and time gets away from you. And, and I told you this the other day, but you interviewed me. This is how we met in 1999 at the TPC Rivers Bend Home Rama, and you came out, and I can't. Were you with 700 or where?
Well, you know what? I'm trying to think what. I was with KRC Radio, I think, at that time, because that was probably mid-90s, you think? Yeah. Was it around there? So I was probably with KRC Radio, and I was probably doing a TV show called Around the House, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
We also had one called Fix This. We had one called Homeworks. It might have been Homeworks.
Yeah, I think it was Homeworks.
Yeah, and that's where we met. So we did 16 to 20 half-hour shows. Yeah. Every year. Yeah. We did that for 16 years.
That was, I remember the topic of conversation we talked a little bit about was right when they started the fuel surcharges, because fuel was getting so expensive. And then the guys couldn't figure out how, we talked about that for a little while, but just about every year since then, you and I have done an interview about something, I come down to the radio station and we would do it. And it's meant a lot to me, and I've always looked up to you, and I'm really glad that you've taken the time to be here with us today.
Happy to do it.
I really appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? What's your story?
I'm just not exciting. I mean, I grew up in the Deer Park, Dillonville area.
Yeah.
And got married when I was 21, bought the house across the street. Went to Muller High School and UC and got into a little store design, and that kind of just got me rolling. But
nice.
Just a local kid.
There's
kid
a
with
lot
a great
of people
story.
that come from down there in Dillonvale. You don't realize. I mean, Harry Yagi and there's a lot of people that come from down there.
Here's the funny thing from a media perspective. Within about a 4-block area, there was Bill Cunningham, Gary Sullivan, Jim Kelly from the Bearcats, Denny McEwen.
Yeah.
We were all that close.
I'm telling you.
So it was in the water.
People are always like, it's just Deer Park. This. I'm like, you have no idea the class of people that come out of there. It was,
there's
I don't know. It must have been in the
legacy.
Water back there. And,
Absolutely.
So how you went to Muller High School, and how many kids do you have? How many grandkids?
Oh,
You're married.
gosh.
You're married to a beautiful lady, right?
We're going on in December. It will be 48 years.
Nice.
And we have 3 children. We have 8 grandkids. I've got grandkids now that are teenagers, which is really hard to believe. I mean, we're in our 2nd round of sports.
Yeah.
It was like my daughter played, she was the last of the 3 kids, and she played soccer in college. And when she was finished, she goes, "Do you think you'll ever miss these soccer games?" And I'm like, after 25 years of sports, probably not. Well, we're in round 2 now. So, it's all wonderful. It really is. It's a blessing. It's
What's
great.
the secret? I mean, so you got married at a young age. You've been in show business. So what's the secret to staying married that long?
Saying you're right, honey.
That's right. That's what my grandpa said too.
As my son always says, because we're both type A's. I mean, and we've been around each other for a long time. And she'll say something, and if I start pushing back, he'll just look at me and he'll say, "Dad, when are you gonna learn?"
Yeah.
So that's the secret. Is just
my grandpa,
right.
he was the type of guy that he could say a million cuss words a minute and you think it was all right. Because the way he talked, it was just so funny. But you would always say, because they were married for like 100 years and say, what was the secret? What was the secret? He said, well, he said, you keep your thing in your pants and you do what you're told, and that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do.
We're doing a big painting project at the house right now, and it's kind of my field, right?
Yeah.
I mean, home improvement and stuff like that. And she was pushing to get the house painted. It's 25 years old. We've certainly painted some things. We wanted to do all the woodwork, and I'm going, I don't think all that woodwork needs to be done.
Right.
And she doesn't really push a whole lot, to be honest with you. And she started pushing like, yes, it does. I'm going, you know what? This is your project.
Right.
This is your project. You can do anything you want to do. Of course, once we got started, we shared the project.
Right.
And that's the key, really.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So did you have any passion as a kid? I mean, were you a sports guy? Were you a book guy?
I was not a book guy. I was an experienced guy. I was a sports guy.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I was also an immature guy physically. Like, I didn't mature till I got to college.
Yeah.
Now I'm a decent sized guy, but back then I was a skinny little guy. So I didn't really play many sports, but my gosh, Jeff, we'd play basketball for 8 hours a day, in the springtime. And I've worked at a golf course and I played golf. So I was a sports guy and started working when I was, at a golf course when I was in the 6th grade, and I'm still working. So I've been working a long time.
Yeah.
I describe myself as a worker bee. I like to stay busy. I like to work. I like to help people. And my field's always kind of, followed that track.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So what's the most significant thing you can remember as a kid?
As a kid, my life as a kid was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. I guess just the friendships, and we lived in little suburbia, and, all the guys came home from the war. All the guys got married. All the guys had kids. So we had hundreds of kids to play with, and honest, that nothing, I was blessed again. Nothing horrible ever really happened when I was a kid, and it was just all good. It was Mayberry, man.
That's amazing. I feel the same way. I mean, I've always, sometimes you get beat up, you get beat down, and you get kind of down in the dumps, and you look around and you're like, I've got a really good life.
Oh, yeah.
I need to shut up.
Oh, my gosh.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. We say our prayers every night about it. I'm telling you.
Every day, every night.
Absolutely.
So you're 15, 16 years old, and you need to get a job. And so do you get a job at Hayter Hardware, or do you get a job at a hardware store?
No. So I briefly get you up to the Hayter Hardware thing. But, again, working at a golf club, and then I kind of aged out of that whole thing and worked in a pro shop. And My dad was working for U.S. Food Service. He got me a job in a restaurant as a busboy, which lasted an hour and 15 minutes.
There you go.
An hour and 15 minutes. He bought me black pants and black shoes and said, get to work. I got you this thing. An hour and 15 minutes. I came back and said, you know what? I don't think I'm cut out for this job.
Yeah.
And I got home and my dad says, well, that's fine. I'm glad you're not cut out for that job, but you owe me $50 for the shoes and the pants. And okay. And actually, my grandfather was in the hardware business, and he worked for Carlson Hardware. He worked in open stores, and for the owner, he used to work for Bostic Braun, which is an old hardware distributor. And my mom called my grandfather and said, hey, do you have a job for Gary, like as a stock boy or something? And he goes, yeah. So my first day, I sat up in the 6th floor of the Lachlan Carlson Hardware store when it was about 90 degrees and priced about 2,000 cotton mop heads. And I went, wow, this job's fun. But that's how I started. And I never left the hardware business until I switched gears in 50 years or 30 years later.
And that's where that's where the journey begins. So
that's where it all began.
That's amazing. So I don't know if you knew this or not, but my grandparents owned a hardware store.
Yeah, you were telling me.
And it was called Lower Hardware, and it was in downtown Mount Healthy.
Right.
And I think there was Mount Healthy Hardware and an Air Hardware store. And I wasn't around for that, but I knew they had enough stories to tell me that. I actually had I didn't show you that when we were doing a tour, but I have both of their first dollar bills upstairs in my office that they made in the hardware store business. And the hardware store business from them and from different ones I've seen was always, if you needed a bolt for a water heater that was 100 years old, you had it. And Tom Humes is a local developer here in Cincinnati. He would tell a story about how he bought a frying pan or electric skillet is what it was from the hardware store. Didn't have enough money to buy it, and they loaned him the money to buy it to give to his mom for Christmas.
Wow.
And it's just I think about those hardware stores and I think about those kind of things. I mean, it was the local place to go. I mean, my grandpa was sharpening knives, fixing toasters, fixing lamps. It was always something going on there.
It was, and I was bitten by it right away and stayed at Carlson's as a part-time and then worked as an assistant manager, and then started thinking as I was getting older, I need to make more money. And Hayter was the big chain, and, went over there and talked to them. And with my background, a little bit of designing stores, I switched gears and went there, which was another side street that took me to a highway, and boom, so that was fun.
I think that, and there's only, and I was wondering if Hayter was like that when they started out, but there's only a couple of them left that can really be that old school hardware, because they're all we all get beat down by these big companies.
Well, and it's all about turn and profit and margins, and eventually you just can't carry that one bolt that's going to sell in the next 80 years.
Yeah.
And you look at your big box stores and it's just commodity dealers is what they are basically, which is fine. It's helped us all drive prices down, but it's drove the little guys out.
Yeah.
But there's a couple chains, the Aces and the Do It Best, that do a really, really good job. Yeah. You may not have the ladder on the wall going back and forth and the wood floors and all that, but they've got a lot of non-commodity items.
Absolutely. There's Marilee's over in Cleves.
Sure.
They do a great job. And then I'd say that Ace Hardware up there in Mason, that whole family works there and they do a great job. They're the same way. And they would tell me a story about it. They used to shut down, maybe they do now, maybe it's different, but they used to shut down on Christmas Eve. And I think there was one of their customers, their water heater went out on Christmas Eve, blew up, messed up, just did all this stuff. And he said, never again will I shut down on Christmas Eve. So they're open for a certain amount of hours to make sure that they're there for their customers. Yeah. It's pretty cool. But it's funny, when you go to the big box stores and they got all those people working in there, and me and my brother always say, we walk in there and say, I don't need to know about it. Just tell me where it's at.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. Just tell me where it's at. And I'll take care of it.
So did Hayter start out like that in the beginning, do you think?
So, sure. All hardware stores were like that. I mean, they were all like that. And it just got to a point, it got to a standpoint of how long you can stay in business like that. And the answer is not very long, really. I mean, you got to get into other things and find other. When I jumped on board with Hayter, they had 7 stores. When I sold them, we had 18. So we kind of had the formula, but it was a blend between that old hardware store and the big box store.
Yeah.
And if it was a real super commodity, we just kind of quit carrying them.
Right.
I remember one time agonizing, do we have to really carry power tools?
Huh.
because people aren't going to come to us for power tools.
Yeah.
But they're going to come to us for paint and fertilizers. And so we carried a very stripped down portion of the power tools, but we carried some of the non-commodity items or unique items that we liked that we would then advertise from the whole radio show, which I'm sure we'll get to. And we'd have exclusivity on them and different things like that. So we found ways to mix that type of business plan and be successful.
That's a pretty cool philosophy. Yeah. I never thought about it like that. Have you ever read the book From Good to Great? When they talk about the different aha moments that they had and different things, and that's a really cool way to look at that and not carrying those kind of things. So we got ahead of ourselves a little bit, but what's your journey?
Imagine that.
I know we can sit here and do this all day.
All day.
What's your journey? You're and we're going to lead up to how you and what your position was at Hader Hardware, but your journey at Hader Hardware. Let's start there. When did you walk in the door? What was it like?
So it was probably 1975.
Yeah.
And just out of school, had worked at Carlson's for 5 years. And they were building the Milford store out on State Route 28. And I was hired to help them put the design in action because that was a little bit of my background. And Milt Hader, there was two brothers, Jim and Milt. Milt was the oldest one. He always kind of did the design and merchandising, and he was getting older. He had some health issues and was going to retire soon. So anyway, I started out there as an assistant manager, and I think I moved 4 stores in 3 years. I mean, I was bouncing around and then managing a store. And so I started out just, in the stores, being a store manager, which is what I had done for 3 or 4 years. So.
Yeah.
So it was, and then we put that store together, and then, they were in a position in life where they were successful and they had some cash flow and they wanted to open more stores. They wanted to build this legacy, which was very fun. Our next store was Fort Thomas, and then it was Dillonvale, and then it was Loveland, and it just kept going. So I kind of followed that chain around.
Yeah. Well, that had to be cool for you to go back to Dillonvale and open that store, right?
Yeah. The sad part of that story, but it's kind of looking back on it, it's kind of neat. So we literally grew up the side street 5 doors down, and it was a Woolworths, and we had bought it, and this was 1981. And my mom was 53, had a heart attack, passed away.
Oh, man.
And the day that we closed, the day after she passed away, and everybody's been through those times, and my dad and I went to that store, and for 2 days, we swept and cleaned that whole store out.
Really?
That's what we did to keep our minds off what was going on.
Wow.
I always think back on that. It was kind of a real father-son time. He wasn't in the business, and my job was to keep him busy.
Yeah.
So that, that's just kind of a memory that's just kind of cool.
And I was going to say it's a horrible story.
Yeah,
but it's a cool story.
But it's a cool story.
You don't get a lot of dad moments like that a lot of times, because they were so gruff all the time. But man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To do that, but that's a horrible story. I didn't know that about your mom.
Yeah.
So you climb the ladder and you end up you own a joint, right?
Yeah. So they after we'd put a couple stores together, and I had managed a couple stores. So this is spin forward probably 8 years. I was invited into the office to do merchandising for all the stores and oversee all that, which was very exciting because it was the first time in my life I was ever off weekends, which lasted, I think, 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm back working weekends. I think I've had 2 years of weekends off in my entire life since the 6th grade.
Right.
But that's the way we roll. That's okay. I don't have any problem with that. But so that was fun. I just oversaw that. And then a few years later, it was like, hey, we'd like you to take over personnel also. I went, whoa, hold on. I don't want to have anything to do with personnel. We're at 180 people. So I was doing merchandising and personnel, and I was always out in the field. I wasn't an office guy. I made Mr. Hader a deal that said, you can't fire me if I screw this up.
There you go.
That's number one. Number two, if I screw it up, you can't unscrew it up. Okay? That's my problem.
Yeah.
And I think in a way he was a little bit desperate. I mean, he wanted me to take that job, and he didn't want to go through hiring somebody and find somebody. So finally he goes, okay.
Nice.
And the first thing I wanted to do was a pretty big deal. I won't go into that, but it was a pretty big deal. And he said, we made a deal. If that's what you want to do it. And if it screws up, clean it up. And I went, this is going to work out just fine.
That's good.
So yeah, that's what we did. And then, we stayed very busy in about 1988. I did have a partner back then.
Okay.
I was a majority partner. We had a minority partner. He was an inside guy, an awesome guy, took care of all the stuff I didn't want to take care of.
Yeah, that's a good partner.
And we did that, and we grew it, and we took over full ownership in 1992.
Wow.
So, yeah, then it was ours.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the world was changing a lot then, too,
Yeah,
when you think about it. There was no Home Depot, no Lowe's in Cincinnati.
Right.
So that was still coming.
And, my grandparents said that, too, that when they had when Swallens opened up in Tri-County, that's when they started struggling.
Yeah.
And then Central Hardware came in to Coleraine, and he said that's when they started seeing the decline, and then that's when they started thinking about getting out of the business, and they became a remodeler. But, I could see that. But you're on the cusp there in 93, which is when the year I graduated high school and then started going to college.
Are you bragging?
That's
about
no.
that?
The only reason I remember that is because right when I got to college is when they started having inklings of the internet. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, we were fresh off of cell phones at that point.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's a big deal. So,
it is.
So you come out of Hater Hardware, and now how do you magically get into radio business, show business? Where does that start?
So I do a little speech at different business groups, and it's called "It Just Kind of Happened."
Yeah.
And I would say it just kind of happened. There's always somebody that believes in you more than you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You may have the ambition, but there's somebody that really does believe in you. And I've had 3 or 4 people that really believed in me way more than I ever believed in myself.
Wow.
And the way it happened on this is in 1986, Jim Hader, who was the younger brother, who was the main Hader brother, and he was the president, president CEO. He comes to my desk. I was in the office, and he goes, puts this letter on my desk and says, you need to call this guy. And I looked at it and I go, what is it? And he goes, it's a WCKY radio. They're looking for somebody to do a 1-hour home improvement show. You could do that. I said, listen, my wife is pregnant with our 3rd kid. I have 2 boys under 5. I'm working a lot of hours. We're in retail. I'm not going to do that. And I never, ever want to do that. And no, not too many people ever talk to him that way, But he and I had a special bond. And he took that paper and he walked back in his office. He comes back an hour later, slaps it on the desk. He goes, call him. I said, I'm not going to call him, Jim. So the next week he came back and he said, you call that guy. And I said, no, I did not. I'm not going to do it. I don't really have the time. I certainly don't have the desire. I'd rather concentrate on this part of my life. Kind of huffed away again. Week 3 comes back. You need to call this guy, Gary. You could do this. And I'm going like, I don't want to do it. And he goes, well, I'm sitting here. Do you call him? And he sat there. I was like, you serious? Sit here,
persistence.
So I called him. I called this guy, and the guy goes, yeah, okay, come on down, audition. You can be on with Jim LaBarbera, and you do a little 1-hour show with Jim, and that'll be your audition. I said, okay. Well, that day, Sue went into labor. Oh, good, I got out of that. So we had to reschedule, and I did the show, and I walked out of the studio, and Bruce Still, who was another guy that believed in me, says, "Can you start next week? It's a 1-hour show." And I go, I don't even know. I just answered some home improvement questions. I don't know how to do it. He said, LaBarbera will work with you for about 6 weeks, and then you'll be on your, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. That's how it started.
Wow.
And within a year, I was doing 3 hours, and then I was doing Friday nights and Saturdays. And
Did you fall in love with it right away, or was it something that took you a little while to be like,
well,
this is
first
something I
you're
have to do?
nervous and you're saying, why am I doing all this, to be honest with you? But yeah, I got the bug on both of my careers, I call them. I got the bug pretty much right out of the get-go. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about that is it helped the hardware store so much, because the people would say, as I gave the answer to the question, they would say, hey, does Hader have that? Wow. Nice. Yes, we do.
That's cool.
Yeah. So from 86 to probably 96, that show just kept growing and growing, and it was so good for our business.
What was the name of that show?
It started out with a name called Service Line.
Okay.
The original concept of the show, I would sit there and figure how this would ever work. I was going to sit there with a plumber, an electrician, and somebody else. And whenever the question, I would host and give it to them. That's not going to happen.
A beat button all the time.
So, no, I'm none of the above. But I was a hardware store jockey, so I could kind of answer a lot of questions, and also had, I'm not going to say a photographic memory, but if I heard it once, I had it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way it started rolling on. It just got bigger and bigger, and then the radio industry consolidates.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that story. Now, it could be my story. Now, Gary Sullivan interviews me at 22 years old in 1999, and all of a sudden one day I designed a WB download, and this thing takes off and goes nationally. I owe you some credit. I'll speak to your benefit on that.
There you go.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Life is a crazy road. I remember before I got married, Sue and I chatting with my mom one night, and Sue was in nursing school and I was in a hardware store, and she would just laugh at us because we knew where we were going.
Right.
And she'd say, you have no idea where you're going.
Yeah.
Oh, we get so mad. And
that's funny. I heard a saying one time that says, man makes plans and God laughs.
Yeah. I mean, we both ended up doing things we never thought we'd do.
So then bring it up to you were on the radio, and then you went into Homeworks. Is that what, or it was at home with Gary?
Yeah. So even before that, actually, when the radio first started, I worked for Channel 9, and I did news tips in their 6 o'clock news. And then also in that period of time, CKY was sold to J-Corps.
Okay.
So then I was on KRC. They had tried to get me to come over before, but I had no reason to go over. But the radio business was consolidating, and then I worked for them. And then they also owned Local 12. So I was moving over to Local 12. So I was all what is now iHeart then.
Okay.
So I started news tips on 12, and then we started the show Homeworks. In between there, see, I was busy.
You were busy.
I wasn't just,
You were always busy.
We did a show called Fix This. We also did a show called The Hardware Store, which was on Time Warner Cable. So they were segments. Did the Fix This show with Marilyn Hare. She did a cooking segment. And anyway, that all grew, and then the consolidation of radio stations started happening, and that's how the big step went. But the TV actually started right at the same time the first radio did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's pretty cool that a big company like that is almost guiding the direction in which way you're going. I mean, because they buy this company, they buy this, and then they buy this station, you end up on this station, and takes it through there. So you're doing this at the same time. You're on radio and TV.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't like
radio,
you're on radio
TV,
and then you went to TV.
Radio, TV, and the hardware stores.
Yeah.
We're all operating at the same time.
So at what point did you say, all right, I'm going to retire from the hardware store business, and then now I'm going to go to the radio? And
it just kind of happened again. So one day I get a call from the guy who now runs the Tribune, who at that time, I knew him as a kid in the mailroom. Calls me up at the hardware store and says, hey, let's have lunch. And I go, Sean, why do I need to have lunch with you? And I wasn't being smart, but I was busy. And it's like, what are we going to talk about? He said, listen, I just need to have lunch with you. I said, okay. So we meet for lunch. He sits down. Randy Michaels was the big man at J-Corps, and then became the big man at Clear Channel that came into iHeart. And he said, Randy wanted me to have lunch. We sat down for lunch. He goes, Randy wanted me to have lunch with you. I got some news. And I'm going, I'm fired? He said, no, you're going to be national Saturday. This is Thursday. I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, you're going to go on 50 stations and we're going to see how it goes. And then we want to, kind of start out regionally and we'll take it national. And I'm going, okay, but what's that mean? He goes, you don't have to worry about any of that. Just don't say where you're from and don't give the time because you'll be in different time zones. Okay. I'm driving home and I'm thinking like, ooh, people aren't going to know who Hader Hardware is. That started me thinking. And the regional was 1995. It was successful in 2000. It went totally national. And in that period of time, we started looking at Hader Hardware and said, Home Depot and Lowe's is coming to town. Our leases are from like 1970, so they're going to triple. We're computerized only on the back end of our business. Big expense coming up. There's another opportunity. So I went to my partner and said, this is what I want to do. He was okay.
Yeah.
And so we sold them.
Yeah.
We sold them, which was in a way heartbreaking.
Oh, I'll bet.
But we sold them.
That had to have been tough.
And Jim Hader, I'm sure he wasn't happy. He was kind of ill at that point. But when we put the deal together, one of the things came up is if we ever had to sell them. And he'd say, well, you own them. You do whatever you want with them.
Yeah. And so he, assuming he gave you his blessing, or did you talk to him about it, or did you kind of inform him what was going on?
Yeah, at that time, he knew. He wasn't happy, but he was understanding. Yeah. Let's put it that way. Yeah. He was gentlemanly about it. Yeah. But during that period, we certainly had some issues. Never raised a voice, but I remember he was disappointed. And then one day, after a couple of days of silence, he just came to my desk and said, hey, we're big boys. Come in my office. Let's talk this thing out. And we did. And he got it. Yeah. He wasn't happy. Right. He didn't give me a big hug. And I get that too. But he also was a businessman. He understood what we were doing. Yeah. Felt we had good reasons to. So did you sell individual stores? Or did you sell the whole? Sold the whole thing. The whole thing. The whole thing. We sold to Cruzy Hardware, which was a trustworthy dealership, small. It made sense for them to buy it. Yeah. And they reached out to me. We kind of quietly spread the word that we might be looking to do something. And we literally sold it in 6 months. I forgot all about that because the Cruzies were friends with my in-laws, my wife's mom and dad. Okay. And we knew them through the years, and I forgot all about that. So that's a good, you think that's luck? Well, the whole thing, I always say, I don't know, maybe this is a little utopia. It was kind of all meant to be. I mean, it just kind of happened. I mean, it goes back to that. The things just kind of happen. That is awesome. So the radio takes off. Then we had more time. That's when we started the homework show that we did 16 episodes a year. Yeah. And, half-hour shows, that takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of patience. Oh, man. But we were doing that. I was doing the national show on then Saturdays and Sundays. We were obviously talking to a lot of national clients and sales. I had who used to sell radio at WCKY in 1988. Laura Dickout, sold my show a lot locally. And then when that got sold, I actually hired her at marketing at Hader. Yep. And then when we did the show, she used to help produce the Our Joe Fisher show. So we started producing the show. And then she was selling my national show. So her and I were partners big time in that. Yeah. So so now we're sitting with 300 national stations and doing podcasts, and it just kind of happened. That's amazing. She, you and I were talking to her about her a little bit earlier, and she did a great job. And like you said, you couldn't tell anybody was working for one or the other. You guys were a team, and she just did. It was just. I say it all the time, and I'm sure. I hope she believed it, but it was. I could not have done it without her because she knew how to produce TV shows. Yeah. And she was a driven person. She knew how to sell. And I got to tell you this funny story, because you asked me if I was a book person. I said, no, I am now. But one of the interesting things I found out, now they have things like people that can't read, write, dyslexia, or what is it, ADD, or one of those things. I don't know what it was. But her and I, on our first TV shoot, she comes up to me and hands me a piece of paper and says, here, memorize this. And we need to shoot it. And it was an opening. And she comes back in 5 minutes, says, you got that? It's 20 words maybe. And I said, no, I can't do this. Can we get a teleprompter? She's like, teleprompter? No, just memorize it. And do it fast. And she comes back in 5 minutes. She goes, you got that? I went, Laura, seriously, I cannot memorize this. I don't know why. I'm getting upset. She's getting upset. I said, I'll tell you what, just read it to me, will you? Just read it to me. She reads it to me. Read it to me again. Reads it to me again. Read to me again. I said, okay, I'm ready to shoot it. And she looks at me and she says, you're crazy. Thank you. And I delivered it. And I came home and told my wife, and she goes, you know what? That's why you can't read. You can't read. Now when I read a book, I kind of read it with my lips to myself. I can't read silently. Yeah. I can't get it.
No kidding.
And how weird is that?
Huh. That is crazy.
I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but I think it's a great story.
I think it's a great story,
and it's just, we all have roadblocks, and sometimes we don't even know why we have the roadblocks. But that was just something that a lot of things that went back in my life kind of started making sense. I wasn't a very good student, obviously, if I couldn't read.
Well, I think that's tough, because I think a story like that, if it helps one person listen to the show, or this person tells a story about what they heard on this show, and they can help somebody, because there's so many things that happen in kids' lives when they're younger, and their teachers are busy and parents are busy, and little things like that get overlooked, and they struggle, but you don't know why. Right. And if that could help somebody, that's awesome.
Exactly. I wasn't a very good student when I got working in hardware stores. I was successful. People liked me. We accomplished things. I took risks. They paid off. Then the radio. So I don't know. I don't know what that answer is, but it was an aha moment in life. It's like, well, the last 40 years makes sense. Now I got to work on the next 40 years. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's how that.
So what do you think? I mean, we were talking about Laura being so driven, but what drives you? What drives you to continue to do this? I mean, you're busy.
I just, I think I used the words in the beginning, starting in the hardware store. I like helping people.
Yeah.
My kids always laugh at me, like, you'd give the shirt off your back. That's the big phrase. One time we had a grandson, he was about a year old, and, a little spit up, and I took my shirt and I wiped it. My son goes, I told you you'd give your shirt off your back. No, I just like helping people, and I like being involved, and, as long as you can, you should, is kind of the way. I was definitely going to retire when I was 68. I was absolutely going to retire when I was 70. And I'll probably go another 3 years. I just turned 70. Yeah. We'll see. But I don't want to stay too long at the party.
Right.
But as long as I've got something that I feel like I'm contributing to, I'm in.
It's amazing to see continued passion like that, because I feel like a lot of times for me, I get fed up pretty easily. I'm like, this is just not worth it, and you get beat down and this sucks. And
I've been there too.
Yeah. And I tell my wife, I'm like, I'm looking through Indeed ads, looking for something else to do sometimes. But I was also, my son and I were watching the playoffs, and you watch Dusty Baker sit there in that dugout, and he's like 100 years old, and he's been doing it forever. I mean, he's literally been in a dugout since he was probably 5 years old, and he's still got that fire, that passion to do it, and he's good at it. And I like, man, that's amazing. And I feel the same way. And when I see guys like you, you're constantly still pushing on it, you're still doing it, and you're doing a great job at it. Don't feel like you've sat too long at the table. Well, that inspires me.
Here's a funny story. I'll tell my wife sometimes, who doesn't listen to me. She has to listen to me at home. The last she wants to do is listen to me on the radio. But sometimes she'll say, on Saturday, she'll be taking off. I say, hey, do me a favor, turn into the show today, and make sure I don't sound like I'm an old lost person on this show, please. And she'll stand. Just the other day, I said it to her. She comes down, your voice sounds great.
Oh,
you got no worries. And I'm going, okay. Because that is also important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to stay too long. But as long as there's, I just went to another convention last Thursday. And after COVID, it's been the first time in a couple of years. And you run into so many people that I didn't even remember. And they start telling you a story of something you did for them. It's cool.
That's cool.
Like awesome.
Who's the most famous person you ever interviewed?
Well, I guess you could say Bob Vila.
Yeah. That was one of my other questions. If you ever met Bob Vila?
Yeah, Rich the Thuy did the plumbing thing. They had Norm on, and who's the germaphobe? That's see, I'm really impressed with people. He's on one of the like American Idol shows. Howie Mandel.
Oh yeah,
interviewed him, and
what'd you interview him about?
He was in a booth at the National or International Hardware Show for American Standard.
Yeah,
and Laura set it up.
Nice.
And it was really interesting. We were talking about sometimes doing podcasts and even doing a radio show. You think, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. And then they're okay.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, Howie Mandel. I'm like, who's he? We had the Jonas Brothers on one time. We've had all kinds of people, really. And I remember Howie Mandel was hilarious.
Yeah.
But he was in a booth. He was being paid for a sponsor, and he was going to, he was there to represent American Standard, right? So before the interview, he was funnier than heck, and we bonded, and we were having a great time. And the interview started, and man, he was by the book. I couldn't get a smile out of him.
Really?
He had his business face on. He was going to talk American Standard.
That was, I felt like I was telling you, I interviewed Adam Weber a couple weeks ago, and I felt like because we cut up and we tell stories and everything, and we got on the radio and we started talking, and it was like, this is how it goes. Yeah. Lighten up.
Yeah.
Howie Mandel started out as a comedian years and years ago. Yeah. I mean, he was hilarious.
And who was the guy that did the house thing? He would redo the house. He was on Trading Spaces. He was the carpenter. And then he had that, move that truck. And they bring in what the heck is his name?
Ty Pennington.
Yeah. So I had to introduce Ty at a book signing right when he was getting started. He's still on American Trading Spaces. And we're sitting up in a green room. And my daughter knew who he was. I had no idea who he was. And you talk about somebody with ADD. He was all over the place. Yeah. But we had so much fun, and we're giggling, we're laughing, and there's 2,000 women out there waiting for his book signing. And I'm going, oh, these people are all for me. And he thought that was, anyway, we had so much fun. He was telling me about this big show he was going to have. And I came home and told my wife, I said, honey, if this guy can have a big show, anybody can have a big show. And he did. By golly, he did. And then he got put together with the right people. Yeah. And I used to see him at the Builder Show. We'd always go out and grab a beer afterwards, and he was a rock star.
Scott Dallas and I built that Extreme Home Makeover show here in 2008 up here on Cox Road.
Sure.
And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, it was amazing to schedule things 15 minutes at a time. But I always tell people about Ty. I now know what Elvis went through.
Yeah. He is a rock star.
He's unbelievable. I mean, women of all ages.
Right.
I mean, I was standing, we were getting ready to go back to the tent where they do their stuff one night or one day, I think it was. And there's a woman that's standing next to me that's 50, 60 years old, and she's shaking and she's crying. Yeah. And I said, are you going to be all right? And she goes, you have no idea how excited I am. I was like, clearly I do. This is amazing. And they would stand out there and cheer in the middle of the night. I'm like, he's not even here. He's in a hotel downtown.
We'd go to get a beer at a bar in Vegas or something. Those bars are open, and there'd be hundreds of people just staring at him. And, hey, can I have your eye? And I'd always tease him with that. God, Ty, I'm telling you, I really apologize. I just have a tendency to bring this attraction.
Right.
Who in the world's he with?
It's me, not you. It's me, not you.
Oh, my God. But, yeah, those were probably a couple of the famous ones I always enjoyed.
What was Bob Vila like?
By the book. Yeah. By the book, all about business, all about his brand. Yeah. It was okay.
Yeah, not great. So Norm was the spokesperson for Wayne Dalton Garage Doors for a little while, and then he came up where I went to college at, and he came up there and knew some guys, so we got to
Norm was a cool guy.
Yeah, he was always cool.
I always remember I had a really good interview with him. It was going a little long. It was like 15, 20 minutes, and he goes, we're on the radio, and he goes, hey, Gary, this is on the radio. Hey, Gary, I love to sail, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I want to go sailing really bad right now.
Okay.
I always loved that. And I said, well, your time's valuable, and I'd be the last person that would ever keep you out of your boat. So thanks for joining us.
There you go.
It was like, okay, I got the picture.
When I was thinking about you the other day and thinking about what we were going to talk about and whatnot, I feel like you were somewhat of a pioneer. You were the pioneer, but you were somewhat of a pioneer because you're talking about home improvement. You're talking about new ways to do things. You're talking, and you're on the radio. You're on TV. You're showing people as much as you can at the point in time, and then you look beyond that, and with this old house, that's where I knew Norm from and knew Bob Beeler from, because my grandparents watched it, and it was like on channel 64 or something, and that was kind of it was old fixer up kind of thing, but now we have Pinterest, we have Houzz, we have everything that's on the internet, we have all these different things. You were before that, and I feel like you were the spark of those things.
Well, yeah, and even when you go back, one of the interesting things in my life was at Channel 9, they had a show called Around the House.
Yeah.
And it was a live 2-hour show. And they had asked me to do that. And they'd have to come pick me up at the radio station and rush me at Channel 9 in like 5 minutes and be on the set when this show started, which was always exhilarating and fun just to see if you could make it. And the studio was downtown, so was Channel 9 at that point. But a lot of people won't believe this, but I will attest. This is the facts. We did that for about 4 or 5 years. And one day I got a call from the news director who's now with A&E, and I ran into him at the Builder Show a few years ago. And he said, we're going to start a network. And it's kind of grown out of this whole around the house thing. And it's going to be called Home and Garden Television. And we would like to do a focus group with you. Well, okay, that's like Harvard graduates interviewing a kindergartner. Okay. I'm like all excited thinking, man, I'm going to teach these boys something. And I get in there and I go like, I can't even understand what you're trying to tell me you're going to do. And the guy kept saying, there'll be a place for you. There'll be a place for you. And I go, well, whatever. That's kind of the way I approach life. Whatever. I'll be happy to help you with it.
Yeah.
So I spent a few days and just kind of talking about things I would run into as a problem, which they were light years ahead of me. I'm sure I didn't really help them at all. But one of the things that grew out of it is they called me one time and said this show, there was a channel called the Nashville Network. They want you to come down and audition. Well, I'm just, again, young kids, owning hater, doing TV, doing radio. It's like, God, I've never been on a big time TV audition.
That was big time.
I'm definitely going.
TNN, man.
Where is it? Well, it's in Knoxville. And that's where the HGTV building is now. And I said, okay. Never thinking what happens if I got the job. I couldn't take it. And so I go down there, Mr. Bigelow, I still remember. And they had all the makeup rooms and everything. I mean, it's big time. And I was okay. It wasn't too big for me, but I had no aspirations on any. It's just I wanted to do it. So I go out there and they don't tell you what you're going to do. And there's all these lights and everything. And I got a partner. I can't remember. I think it was Jerry. He's an older guy. And then this voice of God through the top of the studio says, Gary, today you're going to talk about screening and rescreen a screen. And all of a sudden these people come out and they lay all this stuff on the table and they go, you have 3 minutes. Okay. So 3 minutes is up. Are you ready? Yes, I am. I can ad lib. I may not be able to read, but I can ad lib. So we shoot this thing. And it was kind of the same stuff I was doing locally, and it wasn't hard, and I had a lot of good information, I guess. And after we were finished, they go, the makeup artist will clean your makeup, and Mr. Bigelow would like to see you. So I get my makeup clean, go up. Mr. Bigelow says, got a job for you here. And he's making me this job offer, and I'm going like, I can't tell him I can't take it.
Right.
So I said, well, let me think about it for a few days and talk to my wife, and I'll call you up. And I called him back and said, I can't take it. I own all these hardware stores in the city, and I got small kids. And he goes, well, that's not good enough. How would you think about coming down for 2 weeks? You can take your vacation time and we'll just shoot a bunch of clips. And finally, after about 3 weeks, I go, I really can't take this job. But
persistence, people chasing you.
It was fun. It was like, I look back and I'm so glad I did it.
Is that as close to Hollywood as you ever felt?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's so weird. I just never really, I guess it's nice when you don't know things, so you don't put undue pressure on yourself. I was literally doing it for the experience.
Yeah.
Like, low expectations.
That's cool.
And maybe that's the name of the game, is set your expectations in line.
We all should.
Really, I think life would be a little easier.
Yeah.
It's even the radio. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do the TV and nationally. And I got on the board at Habitat for Humanity. And quite honestly, when they first approached me on that, I didn't think I had anything to really lend in. How stupid. The guy just laughed at me and said, you underestimate yourself dramatically.
Oh, man. We're going to talk about Habitat here in a minute, but, that's funny. I had something I was going to say to you about that, but I forgot. So, who's the most famous person you ever met?
Well, we were talking about that. I guess, the Bob Vilas and, all that, but Ty, I guess that's probably about it.
Yeah.
That's probably about it.
All right.
I don't know.
Let's talk about home improvement again. So like we said, you're a pioneer for it. Home improvement's you've been a leader for this industry and how to do things right, how to take care of your home, teaching people different things, different methods. What's the most important thing you've learned about home improvement?
Everybody wants to do it cheap and easy.
Yeah.
And I coined a phrase before I even figured that out. And I used to say, I'm all about easy. And I am. And I think every do-it-yourselfer is all about easy, but I'm not all about cheap.
Yeah.
So that's the things that I've learned. Everybody, and I hate to paint things with a broad brush, but I'll say the majority of people, when they have a problem in their house, we're back to expectations, absolutely think they can fix it themselves. This will not be a problem. And I'm sure there's a can of something worth $10 that'll do that.
Yeah.
So I've always looked at the radio show as an opportunity to educate people. It's not an opportunity to put people down. I try to treat the callers as if they were a customer in the hardware stores.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not all perfect. We aren't all experts in a field. So it's a teachable moment. And, it's like, okay, so if you patch a crack in your foundation that's got water gushing through it, but Gary, I see these pails. They're like $6 and I can fill that, right? Just answer me one question. Well, what's that? Where's that water going if you patch that? There's always a little bit of silence. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, that crack was probably caused by water.
Yeah.
And if you patch it, what's that water going to do? He goes, I don't know. Do you think it'll crack it again? Probably.
Yep.
Probably. So, I think that biggest misconception is I'm all about doing it yourself. And, but we got to know what our limitations are. And we got to, like I personally, you're more of a wildlife kind of guy than I am, I think. If I got raccoons in my attic, I'm probably not going to screw around with that.
Right.
I don't know anything about raccoons. I'm going to get an expert. I don't take calls on electricity on the show.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if the person I'm talking to even knows what a neutral is.
Sure.
So I'm not going to take those calls. So anyway, and I get plenty of silly calls too, but that's kind of the charm of the show.
I'm with you too. The only difference is that I'm German, so I find the hardest way to do everything as possible. I mean, everything I do. I've been doing this for 27, 30 years, and you would think there'd be a system to it. And I'm always like, well, what if we did it this way?
Oh, well, I love it.
And my dad was like, and it would piss me off all the time. And I'm like, why? You've been doing this for so long. You should know. And I'm like, no, let's try and figure out this way.
Let's do this one. Yeah. Well, one thing I learned when I went nationals in Texas, everybody does it themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, don't even suggest calling in somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, I got this.
That's because they get away with whatever they want down there. They make their own rules.
Yeah, I got this. I'm from Texas. It's like, okay, man, I got it.
Do the stories of horrible contractors ever get easier?
No. In fact, I always give, quite honestly, in all fields, there's good and there's bad. We both know that.
Yeah.
And, but I try to give, I think contractors also take a bum rap on a lot of things. I really do. And I'm not here to protect the bad ones. I'm not here. I just, a contractor, I'm sure you'll agree with this. People call me sometimes and they'll go like, what's the best shingle I can put on my house? And I said, well, let me ask you this. If you get the best roofer you'll get the best shingle.
Right.
And that's
an awesome
teachable,
answer.
because if you're a really good contractor, you're not using crappy products, period.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but there's bad ones out there. And no, one of the things, and I get emails from contractors all the time that says, thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
I'd say, well, rather than just going a little bit crazy on them, I get your point. I understand what you're saying, and you may be right, but you got to give him a chance or her a chance to fix the problem.
Right.
And then there's others. Well, he's not returning my calls. I can't even find. I get that. Then you move on.
Right.
You either got to figure out a way to get that resolved or just move on with your life. You got ripped off.
I agree. I mean, I think that it's like anything. The bad customers are always the ones that stand out more than the good customers. Right. The bad contractors are always the ones that stand out more than the good ones. And people are talking about a horror. I mean, that's where they've been trying to license builders for years. And that bill came from people getting screwed by remodel contractors. Right. And because they come in, and, they don't sign a contract, they give them money, they leave, and then they don't come back. And just horrible things like that.
I get on there and somebody's calling them. I'll use roofing again as an example. And I'd say, well, what exactly did your bid say?
Right.
Well, I didn't get a bid.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then that's on you.
There's a little buyer beware.
That's on you.
Yeah.
Did you give money? Yeah. So you don't have a contract, you don't have a bid, and you've given them money. Now, seriously, that's where your problem is. So if you get anything, you're going to be lucky.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to people trust. I feel like so many times when I have a customer walk in the door and we're talking most of the time right now, they know who we are.
Right.
But if they built a house before, you have to take their guard down. Because if they had a bad experience, they have a friend that had a bad experience, then you're fighting through that. And then you can start talking about what we're going to do. Right.
When I have, because I don't do everything myself either. When I have contractors at our house, I will go out of my way to make sure they have a good day.
Yeah.
And I know how tough jobs can be on contractors. You've got maybe a couple customers and one's not being very cooperative, and you got to take care of that person just to get them out of your life and work with your contractor, interview your contractor, make sure you're going to live with that person for a while if they're remodeling your kitchen. You better have some good feelings about that person. I mean, you don't have to go out to dinner with them, but you ought to just work real hard at having a good relationship and communicate. That's the key.
I can't agree more. I tell people that all the time about when they come to work with us. I mean, it's got to be communication. We've got to feel comfortable with each other. We've got to know each other. You got to like each other, because we're going to be together for a long time.
That's exactly correct.
A long time. Exactly. So let's talk about Habitat for Humanity a little bit, and how you got involved with that, and why you get involved with that. What drives you with that?
Well, it just kind of happened.
Yeah,
Jeff. I know you're going to find that hard to believe, but it just kind of happened. A long time ago, I started teaching home improvement classes to Habitat homeowners. And they, by the way, are owners that have paid for that house. Nobody from Habitat is given a home. It's a great misconception. So these are folks that make minimal salaries and minimal jobs, so entry-level jobs, and can't qualify for a bank loan. And in a lot of cases, it's generationally. You probably went to many hardware stores with your father. So did I. An example, when I first got on the board, I was doing one of these classes and somebody said, there's a filter on your furnace. Yeah, you take it down to Beck's Hardware with the furnace and tell them you need one of these. They'll help me like that. Yep. So it's generational. And so I taught these classes for like 25 years and then was still teaching them. And out of nowhere, a fella called me up who was their board chairman and went to lunch and said, hey, we'd like to get you on the board. And I go, oh, geez, I don't know about that. And he goes, well, so he tells me the Habitat story.
Yeah.
Well, so he tells me the story. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, I'm in. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And
was that Tom? Who was?
No, that was Carl Bergman.
Okay.
And Carl was probably, I know you did some blitz build with him. And in 07, I think I got on the board about 2011. And Carl was one of these guys that believed in you. In fact, after on there and then was elected chairman, I was chairman for 3 years, which is, we were supposed to be on there for a year, but we were acquiring, and then they kept asking me, I kept staying, and we went from 6 builds to 35 builds. And so we were rocking and rolling. And, imagine that.
And that's the downtown. That's the one. This is the Greater Cincinnati habitat.
Yeah.
Right?
So Greater Cincinnati. When I got on the board, there was actually 3 of them. We were the inside the 275 loop, and then there was another one on the outskirts, and maybe even on the west side a little bit. And then there was another one in northern Kentucky. And in order to get the P&Gs and the Home Depots and people to invest in you, it became obvious to us that we need a bigger breadth here. So we ended up in a 9-county Habitat for Humanity, which is now called the Tri-County Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
But there's so many. I learned so much being on that board. It's amazing.
Just being around it, I learned so much. But I think you made a good point to say that these people are buying these houses, and because I think people feel like it's a handout, and people don't know that before all this fad became the building down in the city of Cincinnati, Habitat was one of the largest builders in Cincinnati.
Right.
And,
and I think now they're like the 10th or 11th largest builder in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
It's like, holy cow.
But the people who are buying these houses, they have to put in so much volunteer time to build the house, right?
They do. I've often said, and I mean this sincerely, I don't know if I would have the strength to do what those families do. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah, a lot of them had maybe made some bad mistakes or bad decisions that got them to. But the miracle, and you were on job sites, the miracle of Habitat happens at the job site.
Yeah.
Because the people that volunteer, usually older guys, take these folks under their wings and maybe introduce them to church for the first time.
Yep.
Maybe introduce them. I remember this one gal, she used to draw blood from one of the hospitals. And these guys were going like, why aren't you a nurse? She was like, I could never be a nurse. Well, somebody makes a call. Gal's a nurse, and she gets a Habitat home. She's paying her bills. She's got a house for her kids. She's a nurse, and it's like, it's. I hate to say it, it's not the build. It is the house.
Yep.
But the magic is like everything else. The people you surround yourself with, and they're surrounding themselves with people that want to give back. And I can't tell you, in 10 years, I learned more things than I ever would have guessed. And I assumed so much, and I was so wrong.
Yeah. I dealt with Tom was I can't remember his last name was the president.
I know who Tom was.
And then Marissa Woodley, which is Marissa Abernathy now.
Right,
but she was a huge inspiration to me to do it. She was super organized and did a great job. But the things that we learned there was one of the main things we're building a house, but you're providing a dinner table, so to speak. And so these people have a place to sit.
Sure.
They have a place to eat dinner. They have a place to do their homework. They have a place to call home. And it just changes lives so much by this whole, it's a dream of home ownership.
It totally does.
Yeah.
I mean, it totally changes everything. And there's statistics that make your jaw drop, you know, how people go on to higher education, decreases teen pregnancies. It just goes on and on. My favorite story is this person, single mom, 2 boys, job site. They introduce her to church. She gets the boys to join the choir. They ended up Vienna Choir Boys.
That's great.
Now, how's that going to happen? That happened in a couple years.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming here that probably didn't even know what the Vienna Boys Choir was.
Yeah, I don't.
And then all of a sudden, bam, 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 up the ladder. And,
huge.
It's huge. Those things just happen. And I could share. I got into one of the things so you term off a board after 7. I think I was there for 8 years because we merged. So I got an extra year. But I started getting into family selection where you go out and interview people.
Yeah.
And now there's a backlog of interviews, like everything else, it's like eating an elephant. All we need is more money and more volunteers. We can do all kinds of things. But I would interview people, and some I would say, okay, they need a house. And some of them I'd get in my car. I'd cry.
Yeah.
I'd like, there's no way I would have. How did this person who immigrated from the Congo who ended up in Uganda in a refugee camp figure out to get to another country in the world, and it ends up being the United States, gets a job in house cleaning, ends up being in charge of floors at a hospital, and has a habitat home.
Yep.
How's that happen?
It's amazing.
I could never do that. I'm not that smart. Honest to God, I'd just be in total awe. It's like, oh, you think you're so good.
But they fight and claw.
That
and
is
keep
good.
Going.
Yeah.
And they survive. They're survivors. It's amazing.
So that's probably the best gift I ever had was getting on that board.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
I'll bet.
It was amazing.
We, and we stole a page out of their book because everybody signs one of the floor joists. Everybody that worked on the house puts a little scripture on there. And we do that in our houses. We give our customers and all their friends big black markers. We leave them on the job, and people go around and write on all the different walls scriptures. And we do it as a company, and it's when you tell these people about it, but it's not a selling point. It's just something that it brings it home. It makes it
my home.
Yeah. And they'll come out, the customers will come out and they'll see something I wrote on the wall. They'll see something that Robin wrote on the wall or something that whoever, and it just breaks them down. But it just that passion, it's that passion that what you want.
It's incredible. And the neat thing is I was able to bring in so many national donations from LP Siding jumped on board, and they do all the sheds at all the houses. And oh my gosh, Champion Windows, they do a house with windows, and that's cool. As a client and as a host, I never asked anybody for anything. And I remember telling them when they were asking me about the board, I'm not a very good asker. Yeah. I'm a doer, but I don't like to ask. Well, after about a year or two, I kind of really enjoyed asking because I enjoyed telling the story. And if you tell the story right, it's pretty hard to say no. That's right. So I enjoyed that part of it.
When we were getting ready to tear down that house for the Extreme Makeover house, I called my friend Mike O'Rourke and been known him since I was a little kid. And I'm telling him the story. He's like, and I think he said something like, yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. And he called his wife, Michelle. And it was like right then, they tell the story. And he goes, I had no other choice.
Yeah, exactly.
You listen to the story. You listen to the story and you have no other choice. So what's next for you? What do you think's going on?
Oh, what's next for me? Well, I have to admit that as grandkids get older, I used to always think there was always plenty of time, but as you get older, you do kind of slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I said we're getting the second leg of grandkids sporting events. So I've certainly cut back. I don't do any TV anymore.
Yeah.
And I've had some opportunities, but no, that ship has sailed. My friend Laura, who helped sail, had some health problems, and she's retired. The sales staff at iHeart in Cincinnati split up all the accounts, so they're doing all the selling. I'm not really involved in that as much. So I've got my life really manageable right now. I love doing the show. I could not walk away from it.
Sure.
I just enjoy that part of it. But, I have more leisure time than I've had, and we've been blessed to be able to travel because of the job I have.
Yeah.
And so I guess what's next is enjoying what I got.
There you go.
And as long as the radio component stays intact, I'll keep doing that. And when I start feeling like I'm losing my fastball, that's a Jim Hader saying, by the way, I'm losing my fastball, Gary. What's that mean? Well, when I start losing my fastball, then I guess I'll go to more soccer games and baseball games and lacrosse games. But until then, I'll probably be there on the radio.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. And I know you're busy. I mean, because whether you think you are or not, you are. You got a lot of stuff going on, and for you to take time out of your day. But this is really cool for me because I'm interviewing you.
I know.
And
It's just I was a little
nervous. but you've always been an inspiration to me, and I can't thank you enough for being in my life and through these years. And it's been awesome. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here today, and thanks for all you've done for our industry too.
I have enjoyed life, and I've enjoyed this interview, just revisiting life. And you see all those parts that were moving at one time. And quite honestly, I look back and say, how in the world did we do that?
It just happened.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Everybody, it's Gary Sullivan on the WB Download.
Wow.
All right. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm just giddy. I'll tell you that right now. Cause I hope everybody enjoyed that interview as much as I did. The number one thing that I take away from what Gary said today is someone else has always believed in you more than you believed in yourself. And when he said that, I thought, man, that's incredible. And that hit home with me because that's true. For me, it's true. And I can name off a handful of people, outside of my mom and dad. Of course, I hope my mom and dad did, not always, but I spent more time with them than I did everybody else. So, if I had to say, I'd say Myron Bowling did. I'd say a lady named Sue Hanghold. I'd say anybody that people who, and Cheryl Bowling as well. I mean, anybody who gave me an opportunity to do something, knew that I was in over my head, but still pushed me forward to be able to do something, I'm amazed by, and I'm in awe by. So when he said that, I started thinking about those people, and it really hit home. Like I said, Gary broke through the DIY home improvement barrier. I mean, he's the guy who started telling people about how to do this and how to do that. It was before the internet. It was before Pinterest. It was before any of that stuff. And we had him in this old house. And so he surpassed Bob Vila, and it sounded like to me he's met Bob Vila and wasn't too impressed a couple times. But I'm really just grateful for Gary being on here and coming on to the show and talking with us. And we get to learn and hear his story. And like he said, it just sort of happened, and it's just so awesome to listen to. It was a different type, man. It was really a different vibe. It was a different story. It was different Gary than what I'm used to seeing and who I'm used to talking to. And so that really hit home with me. And again, that makes me even more grateful that he came and did it. Like I said, my first interview with Gary was in 1999 at TPC Rivers Bend on the radio, talking about the Home Rama show, talking about gas prices. We were talking about a number of different things. And then he and I kept it going throughout the years. And I consider him a friend. So, man, one more time, I just want to say thank you, Gary. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you and appreciate you being in my life through all these years. So, hey, I just want to say thank you again to all the people out there listening to the WB Download. I want to thank Gary, of course. I want to tell you that the next episode is coming up in 2 weeks here, and my next guest is a really, really good friend of mine, of course, and his name is Dan DeStefano, and he's with DeStefano Custom Builders. I think they call it WB DeStefano Custom Builders and Remodeling, or maybe it's WB DeStefano Brothers Remodeling. It's him and his brother and his dad, and they work here in Southwest Ohio. He and I have been really, really good friends for a long time. They also have a company called Westchester Hardwood. They do our hardwood floors in our houses, and man, I just think he's a cool cat, and I think he's inspirational, and I just want to get him on here so you guys can hear what he has to say. So that's my next guest. I know I usually don't spill the guts on that, but I wanted to, and I'm going to start doing that from now on because I want people to start listening to it and being prepared for it and looking forward to it. Don't forget that you need to subscribe to our WB Download podcast wherever you get your podcast services at. And if you can't find it, call me because I have a couple of people trying to figure that out, and I don't mind helping you figure that out. And if you want to be a part of the conversation, or if you want to be a guest on the show, or if you want to give us some topics or whatever you have, just email me at wbdownload@wielandbuilders.com. That's wbdownload@wielandbuilders.com. And for more behind the scenes of Wieland Builders and some awesome pictures of our awesome houses that we have, you can go to wielandbuilders.com, wielandbuilders.com. Check us out. Give us a call if there's anything we can help you with. We'd love to be able to help you. And I look forward to coming to you in a couple weeks here with another episode. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. I'm so grateful for you guys being here. And thank you again to Gary Sullivan for being here. We'll see you next week, or we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Thank you, everybody.